Okay, hello everybody. Thank you as always for having me. I appreciate it very much. So here we are. We are at war, as everybody knows. We had a very dramatic night. We had this attack from Iran, and thank God nobody in Israel was killed, I think. That's the report. At least I heard that none of the drones actually landed in Israel. I'm not even sure that's true, but 99% of the drones were shot out of the sky by Israel and her allies, and so that's a big blessing, and we appreciate, and we thank Hashem for that, thank God for that. So we're starting a second Bala Sulam class, a second class in Kabbalah, because the first class that we are working on is more of has a little bit of a lighter style, because we're working from a book that's excerpts from different introductory articles of the Bala Sulam, but now we're going to start to learn the articles inside. So we're going to learn from the articles of the Bala Sulam, and the first article that is usually taught to new students of Ashlag Kabbalah is called Matan Torah, the giving of the Torah. And so the first thing that the Bala Sulam does before people start to learn the Zohar, which is the central text of Kabbalah, is to give like a primer, because people who learn Torah throughout the Galut and learn the revealed Torah, they hear one level of commentary on the Torah and one set of explanations, or two or three sets of explanations. You have allegory, right? So it's not just the simple meaning of the Torah that's offered, but when you get to the Sod, to the secret level of Torah, very often the answers and the explanations are different, even opposite of what is being is explained in Pshat, in the most literal meaning of Torah explanation. So the Bala Sulam does a tremendous amount of work for the introductory student, for this the new student, to explain from top to bottom what the purpose of Kabbalah is. And so we've said it many times in the other class, and so I'll say it here as a starter, that the Bala Sulam tells us that without the inner aspect of Torah, Mashiach is not going to come. He explains that this is one and the same. The coming of Mashiach and the actual person, and actually the learning, the study that you do in Kabbalah, which is to rise out of your ego, are one and the same thing. One of them is the individual level, and the other one is the collective level. But so people, when they hear the Messiah is coming, they don't often think that there's work to be done for each person to bring the Messiah. The person has to bring the Messiah to themselves. In addition to this fact that there'll be one person who is the leader, each person has to do the work of bringing Mashiach to their own soul. Okay, so before we start reading Matan Torah inside, and anybody here who wants to read, please, when I study, the class that I go to, everybody goes around the room and reads. It's a little bit harder here because we only have one camera, but if anybody wants to sit and read, I'm not the greatest at reading, but I will do my best to make it understandable and interesting. But before we read the article Matan Torah, the giving of the Torah, I just found on Shabbat, I was looking through the articles of the Bala Sulam, and I found something that I think is an important little piece. It's from another Hakdama, but it's just a one chapter, a few paragraphs, and I'd like to read that to start, okay? And I think that so we are now reading the actual words translated into English of the Bala Sulam of Rabbi Yehuda Ashlag. And so it's important when you learn Kabbalah to let the words enter into your soul and to listen to them and let them, we're looking for a shift in our desires, a shift in our internal world when we hear when we hear these words. Okay. So what I'm reading now is an excerpt. It's a piece. I'm picking it up in the middle of the article, so it's not going to it doesn't have perfect context, but I think still you'll be able to understand what is being said here. Could you do me a favor and move a little bit on this side so that everybody's eye line is together? I appreciate it so much. It's so helpful for me. That's great. Thank you. Okay, so here we go. Now you will understand what is written in the Zohar. With this composition, the children of Israel will be redeemed from exile. Also, in many other places, only through the expansion of the wisdom of Kabbalah to the masses will we obtain complete redemption. Okay, I'm going to try to not going to break out of the actual words too much with explanations, but I just want to say here, this was written in around the 50s, this stuff, and so the English is modern, but it's not, and the Hebrew was modern, but it's not fully modern. It's a number of years old already. Okay. They also said, the light in it reforms him. They were intentionally meticulous about it, to show us that only the light enclosed within it, like apples of gold in settings of silver, in it lies the cure that reforms a person. Both the individual and the nation will not complete the aim of which they were created, except by attaining the internality of the Torah and its secrets. So here people get confused because they think that only Kabbalah is going to change a person. And so the Baal Shalom says, no, all of the Torah changes a person, but to change a person, they have to have the desire and the intention for the Torah to change them. So if a person learns the revealed Torah, a lot of times they become very consumed by how interesting the material is. You're learning about a marriage contract, you're learning about an argument over property, and so it's hard to remember why you're learning. But Kabbalah, it's easier for a person to know, because that's the subject matter, is about transcending your soul. So therefore, it's easier for a person, when they're learning Kabbalah, to have the light of the Torah, the light that reforms, actually enter their soul. Okay? Back to the material. And although we hope for the complete attainment at the coming of the Messiah, it is written, will give wisdom to the wise. It also says, I have put wisdom in the heart of every wise at heart. Hence, it is the great expansion of the wisdom of truth within the nation that we need first, so we may merit receiving the benefits of our Messiah. Consequently, the expansion of the wisdom and the coming of our Messiah are interdependent. Okay? So here the Baal Shalom just said what I said as in the introduction, is that, because I just read this yesterday, that the coming of the Messiah, the person, and the work of studying Kabbalah are interdependent, they're interwoven. One of them is the collective manifestation, and the other one is your personal manifestation. So we should realize that studying this is the coming of the Messiah to you. When a person studies Kabbalah, they study Pnimius Torah, and their soul is elevated, and they transcend their ego, that is, the Messiah is coming to them. He's saying these are interdependent things. Okay. Therefore, we must establish seminaries and compose books to hasten the distribution of the wisdom throughout the nation. The wisdom he's talking about is Kabbalah. And this was not the case before, for fear lest unworthy disciples would mingle, as we have elaborated above. He's talking about in earlier articles. He said that there were in the past some reasons to be worried about teaching Kabbalah to people who didn't know anything. But he's saying now he's going to make the case that in this generation that no longer is a good enough reason to not study. Okay, here we go. And this was not the case before, for fear lest unworthy disciples would mingle, as we have elaborated above. This became the primary reason for the prolonging of the exile for our many sins to this day. The Baal Shalom just said that because people decided not to study Kabbalah, because they were worried about the problems that could occur, this actually prolonged the exile. So the Baal Shalom is saying. Okay. Our sages said, Messiah, son of David, comes only in the generation that is all worthy, meaning when everyone retires from pursuits of honor and lust. At that time, it will be possible to establish many seminaries to prepare them for the coming of the Messiah, son of David, or in a generation that is all unworthy. The Baal Shalom is quoting a pasuk here, saying that the Messiah will either come in a generation that is all worthy, or a completely low generation where everybody's unworthy. Okay? And we know which generation we're in now. Okay? Meaning, castaways and authors, wisdom shall go astray in them. At such a time, it will be possible to remove the careful guard, and all who have remained in the house of Jacob with their hearts pounding to attain the wisdom and the purpose, holy will be their names, and they shall come and study. So he's saying, it says the Baal Shem is quoting the Gemara, I believe, and he's saying that people will be allowed to study Kabbalah in one of two scenarios. Either everybody will be righteous or everybody will be not righteous. And so he's saying that in this generation where everybody is, the whole generation has become so low with all of the, right, with the internet and all the other things, that removes this, this warning of not studying Kabbalah. Okay? Hence, all who wish to enter may come and enter. Many will roam, and the knowledge will increase among the worthy of it. And by that we will soon be rewarded with the coming of the Messiah and the redemption of the souls soon in our days. Amen. With these words, I unbind myself from the considerable complaint that I have dared more than any of my predecessors to disclosing the with these words, I unbind myself from the considerable complaints that I have dared more than all of my predecessors in disclosing the ordinarily covered rudiments of the wisdom in my book, which was thus far unexplored. This refers to the essence of the 10 spheros and all that concerns them, Yashar and Hoser, Pinimi and Makif, the meaning of Haka, and the meaning of the his dak chut. So what the Baal Shulam here said is that in past generations, all the writings in Kabbalah were written in an encrypted fashion. They were written so only a great sage could understand what is written there. Somebody who's elevated, they have an elevated soul, and they also are so well versed in the revealed Torah that they would understand what's being written in the Kabbalistic text. The Baal Shulam came, and he's telling us here in this letter that he wrote it in plain Hebrew. He got rid of all of the codes, and told everybody exactly what's in the book, and he's telling you now why he did that. Okay? They could have come to me with a great argument. If there are no additions to my teachings here, then the Ari and Rav Chaim Vital themselves and the genuine authors, the commentators on their words, could have disclosed and explained the matters as openly as I did. And if you wish to say that it was revealed to them, then who is this writer for whom it is clearly a great privilege to be the dust and ashes under their feet, who says that the lot given to them by the Creator is more than their lot? So here the Baal Shulam is saying that why does he need to say anything? If he says he's not doing anything new. All he's doing is explaining the Ari HaKodesh without being coded. And he says, well, if they're greater than me, why do I need to do this? Why can't I just leave what they wrote alone? So he's telling you why. He's telling you that because of this generation is so low, they need to be told exactly what's in these books without the codes, without it being encoded. Okay? However, as you will see in the references, I neither added to my teachings nor innovated in the composition. All my words are already written in the 8th gate, in the tree of life, and in Mova Sha'arim, entrance of the gates, by the Ari HaKodesh. I did not add a single word to them, but they aim to conceal matters, hence they scattered them, one here and one there. So the Baal Shulam, Rav Yehuda Ashlag, is from Europe, and the Europeans are known for their academic prowess and for the way that they organize Torah learning. So the academics in all of these great yeshivot in Europe, they codified the methodology in a very modern way. They start at the beginning and they move through to the end. So what the Baal Shulam is here saying is that because the Ari HaKodesh and the greats, the Baal Shem Tov and all these great Kabbalists didn't want everybody to understand what they were saying, they didn't speak in a linear fashion. They didn't write from the beginning to the end. They wrote in pieces. And so a person has to be a great scholar in order to understand, to put it all together. You'd have to learn everything and then order it yourself. So the Baal Shulam saying here that he put it into an order so that a regular person who's not great can understand what's being said here and learn how to do this methodology, okay? This was so because their generation was not yet completely unworthy and required great care. We, however, for our many sins, all the words of our sages are already true in us. They have been said for the time of the Messiah to begin with, for in such a generation there is no longer fear of disclosing the wisdom as we have elaborated above. Hence, my words are open and in order. Okay, that's the little excerpt that I wanted to read before we stop Matan Torah. I'll just say that in this piece, now we have to learn what Kabbalah is and why it's so necessary. And that's what we've been learning, and that's what we're going to continue to learn. So this is the first introductory article of the Bala Sulam for people who want to understand what Kabbalah is and how to start doing the methodology of Kabbalah, okay? Love thy friend as thyself. Rabbi Akiva says about this is a great rule in the Torah. This statement of our sages demands explanation. The word klal, collective, indicates a sum of the details that, when put together, form the above collective. Thus, when we say about the mitzvah, love thy friend as thyself, that is a great klal in the Torah. We must understand that the rest of the 612 mitzvos in the Torah, with all their interpretations, are no more and no less than the sum of the details inserted and contained in that single mitzvah of love thy friend as thyself. Everybody understand what's being said here? The Baal Asulam is coming and he's saying that there's one mitzvah that is indicated in the Gemara, it's in the Torah, in Leviticus 19:18, that says, love thy brother as thyself, is the main collective mitzvah of the Torah. That all the other mitzvot are just ancillaries of that one mitzvah. It's a shocking thing to say. Okay, there's shocking for many, many reasons, but one of the reasons that jumps out at you is that it's no mention of God. I thought we were supposed to serve God. And here it's saying, love your neighbor. It almost sounds like a secular humanist Bible. You mean we don't have to, what happened to the whole half of the Torah that has to do with God? Half the 10 commandments are between the person and God. But here we are, and the Baal HaSulam is going to explain exactly why that is. This is quite perplexing, because you can say this regarding mitzvah between man and man, but how can that single mitzvah contain all the mitzvos between man and God, which are the essence and the vast majority of the laws? Okay? Number 2. And if we can still strain to find some way to reconcile these words, there comes before us a second saying, even more conspicuous, about a convert who came before Hillel. This is mentioned in Shabbat, in the Gemara Shabbos 31, and told him, teach me the whole of the Torah while I stand on one leg. And Rav Hillel replied, anything that you hate, do not do to your friend. The translation of love thy friend as thyself. And the rest is commentary, go study. So he's just bringing another proof why it's very bizarre that you see here. Hillel says the same thing. Rav Hillel says, love your friend as yourself is the whole Torah. Now go and learn. Okay? Here before us is a clear law that in all the 612 mitzvos and in all the writings of the Torah, there is none that is preferred to be the mitzvah, love thy friend as thyself. This is because they only aim to interpret and allow us to keep the mitzvah of loving others properly, since he specifically says the rest is its commentary, go study. This means that the rest of the Torah is an interpretation of that one mitzvah, and that mitzvah, to love your friend as yourself, could not be complete were it not for them. Okay? Very strange. Here we keep going. Let's keep going. Number 3. Before we delve into the heart of the matter, we must observe that mitzvah. Since we are commanded, love thy friend as thyself, the word thyself tells us, love your friend to the same extent you love yourself, not one bit less. In other words, you must constantly and vigilantly satisfy the needs of every person in the Israeli nation, no less than you are always vigilant to satisfy your own needs. Okay? This paragraph, you can expand almost everything that's being said in Kabbalah from this one point here. People spend their entire life studying Torah, but how come people don't stand up and say, God, this is impossible. What are you talking about? How could you possibly command me? Do we know anybody who thinks about everybody else exactly the same way they think, as much as they think about themselves? Just think about that for a second. We're all observant Jews here. We're all studying Torah. And here the Torah is coming to tell you, it's telling you that you have a mitzvah, you have a commandment, that you have to love everybody as much as you love yourself. And think about them as much as you think about yourself. What? Let's just all reflect on that. We all woke up this morning. Did you think about me this morning? Did anybody sitting in this class, did you wake up and say, I wonder what will make Judah happy today? You're all Orthodox Jews. You're all religious Jews. You're all studying Torah day and night and performing all the mitzvahs. What's the Torah talking about? Why does the Torah say, I'll give you a mitzvah that you need to fly around the earth 100 times in a minute? You'd say, I'm not doing that. That's ridiculous. It's impossible. But here we are, and nobody ever complains. Nobody ever says, why would I do this? We go our whole lives, and nobody ever says, this makes no sense. Okay? And I'm jumping ahead and out of context, but the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, is very, 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 very clever. Okay? Our evil inclination, our egos, has many, many, many ways of distorting reality for us. So we know very well that sometimes if something is too painful or too confusing, we just don't think about it. Okay, let's go back to the words of the Baal HaSulam. And if this is still not enough for you, I will tell you that the simple explanation of that mitzvah of loving your fellow person is even harsher, for we must put the needs of our friends before our own. It is as our sages wrote in Kedushin, page 20, regarding the verse, because he is happy with thee, Deuteronomy 15:16, regarding the Hebrew slave, when sometimes he has but one pillow, if he lies on it himself and does not give it to his slave, he does not observe because he is happy with thee. For he is lying on a pillow and the slave on the ground. And if he does not lie on it and does not give it to the slave as well, it is a sodomite rule. It turns out that against his will, he must give it to his slave while the master himself lies on the ground. Okay? I mean, it's unbelievable. He's saying it's not enough that you have to care about me as much as yourself, but if you have a lacking, if I have a lacking and you also have the same lacking, your obligation is to give me the thing. Okay? Are we living like that? And then he says even more, it says that if you don't do this, you're a sodomite, meaning you're the worst person. These are the people that God destroyed, right? For being the worst, most evil people. And here he's telling you that that's your level if you don't do that. So it's just gets more and more confounding what the Baal HaSulam is saying. Okay? The Baal HaSulam is saying what the Torah is saying. He's not saying he's saying it. He's saying this is what it says in our Torah. We also find the same rule in our verse about the measure of loving our fellow person. For here too, the text compares the satisfaction of the friend's needs to the satisfaction of one's own needs. As with this example of because he is happy with thee regarding the Hebrew slave, thus here too, if he has but one chair and his friend hasn't any, the law is that he sits on it, and that if he sits on it and does not give it to his friend, he breaks the mitzvah, love thy friend as thyself, since he is not fulfilling the needs of his friend as he fulfills his own. And if he does not sit on it and also does not give it to his friend, it is as evil as sodomite rule. Therefore, he must let his friend sit on it while he himself sits on the ground or stands. Clearly, this is the law regarding all the needs that one has and one's friends lacks. And now go and see if the mitzvah is in any way feasible. Okay? He's saying, is that possible? No one can do this. Okay? Number 5.
That makes sense.
What?
That makes sense.
That makes sense, that no one can do it. That's the first thing that makes sense so far, is that we could say how could we possibly do this? 5. We must first understand why the Torah was given specifically to the Israeli nation and not to all the peoples of the world equally. Is there, God forbid, nationalism involved here? Of course, only an insane person would think that. In fact, our sages have examined this question, and this is what they meant by their words. Avodah Zarah 2. God gave it to every nation and tongue, and they did not accept it. Okay, so I'm going to keep reading the words even though there's questions here already, okay? But what they find bewildering is why then were we called the chosen people, as it is written, the Lord thy God has chosen thee, Deuteronomy 7:6. Since there was no other nation that wanted it. Moreover, there is a fundamental question in the matter. Can it be that the Creator came with his law in his hand to negotiate with those savage peoples? Such a thing has never been heard of and is completely unacceptable. I'm just going to stop here because we're on the web, and so people are listening from all over the world. And when we study Kabbalah, here's a rule of thumb. We are not talking about the world that we see in front of our eyes. We're talking about our internal natures. And these words are rooted in higher levels of consciousness. So when we say the word Jew, we don't necessarily mean the Jewish person that you see in front of your eyes. Or when we say the words of the nations, we say the word nations, we mean the people that we see all around the world. We have to understand that we are seeing everything and hearing everything and reading all these words through the lens of our ego. And so we have to study a lot of Kabbalah to understand what we're talking about. I'm going to cheat and jump way, way ahead, but we're talking about vessels. We just got finished with Purim, and when we're talking about Vashti and we're talking about Esther, we are talking about vessels. Queen Vashti was the inner meaning of her name is that she is a vessel of reception, that she wants to selfishly accept, and Esther is the vessel of wanting to give. So when we learn these words, we have a lot of work to do in trying to pay attention to our inner world and understand the reactions that we're having when we hear these things. Okay? So let's keep going. But when we fully understand the essence of the Torah and mitzvos that were given to us and their desired purpose, to the extent our sages have instructed us, which is the purpose of the great creation that is set before our eyes, then we shall understand everything. For the first concept is that there is no act without a purpose, and there is no exception from this rule except for the lowest of the human species or infants. Therefore, it is certain that the Creator, whose exaltedness is beyond conception, would not act, be it a great or small act, without a purpose. So, like I said, when you start to learn, the Baal Shalom is going to tell you things, and all of the explanations that you've heard before are going to go out the window. And then we have to take them back. So it's one Torah. There's the shot, and then there's the sod. So we're doing something. If you went to university, that's why this is organized in an academic way. If I told you we're going to learn biology, but you're a chemistry major, I would tell you, I want you to forget everything you're talking about in chemistry and understand what we're talking about in biology. I don't want you to say, but in anthropology, we're talking about this. We're learning a new language. So if you're learning the language of music, and you are a poet, and every time the music teacher tries to tell you something, you want to interpret it through the lens of poetry, you're not going to be able to learn music. So what we have to do now is stop, throw out everything that we think we know about what words mean. We don't even know what words mean. And the Baal Shulam is going to slowly, there's I think probably 1,000 pages of his articles where we have to learn how to think again. We are talking about higher consciousness here. We're not talking about the material plane of existence. So slowly. Just let's listen to the words and do our best to let them enter our hearts. And this is also a very good exercise because when you hear something that sounds very wrong, it can be very shocking to you. And that's the practice that we're doing here, is to try to see how we're feeling about things. Hey, have I been lied to? Hey, am I being told something that's racist? Like, what's happening here, right? So we have to learn how to listen to that, because we're trying to exit out of our individual perspective, our egoistic perspective, and enter into a collective perspective, where we feel all the rocks and the plants and the animals and all the people of the world are really inside of us. So if I told you, if I was going to translate this for you right now, I would say to you, when we say the word Jew, we mean that part of you that's willing to transcend your ego. And when I say the word nation, I mean all the parts of you that are not willing to. So there's 70 parts of you that are not willing to leave yourself behind. And there's only one part of you that is willing to leave yourself behind. Right? There's one part of you that's willing to self-sacrifice, and the rest of you is not. 70-1. Now, why is this encoded in such a strange way, and why the Jewish people, and why we have many pages the Baal HaSulam wrote on this to explain this, and whatever it is that we think, if we're thinking it egoistically, we're wrong about what we think. So anything that we've been told, so that's why he said in the last paragraph, do you think I'm talking about nationalism here? You're completely wrong about what's going on here. If you think that's what I'm talking about. This has nothing to do with nationalism. This has nothing to do with Italians and Irish and Polish. This has nothing to do with that. I shouldn't say nothing to do with it, but it has very little to do with it. And so it's very hard to even understand what we're talking about. But this is this is what we have to undertake. This reprogramming of our hearts and our minds, and we have to. It's like a camera lens where you're focused at 70 millimeters, and everything that's important is at 40 millimeters. So you're fuzzy where you should be sharp, and you're sharp where you're fuzzy. So the way we're focusing on life, we're focusing on all these things, and so we have all of these feelings about things because we're looking at we're looking at the wrong part of reality. And so I'm not doing a good job. Let the Baal HaSulam speak, and we'll keep moving, because I just hear all the questions coming in my head that people must have. Okay. Our sages tell us about that the world has not been created but for the purpose of keeping Torah and mitzvos, meaning, as our sages have explained, that the aim of the Creator from the time he created his creation is to reveal his godliness to others. This is because the revelation of his godliness reaches the creature as pleasant bounty that is ever growing until it reaches the desired measure. I'm going to read that last sentence again. This is because the revelation of his godliness reaches the creature as pleasant bounty that is ever growing until it reaches the desired measure. Is that how anybody here experiences life? Do you feel like God is just giving you bounty and everything is just getting better and better all the time? Is that how we experience God? So again, we have a long way to go to start to even try to understand what's being said here. And by that, the lowly rise with true recognition and become a chariot to him, and to cleave unto him until they reach their final completion. Neither has the eye seen a God beside thee, Isaiah 64:3. And because of the greatness and glory of that perfection, the Torah and the prophecy too refrain from uttering even a single word of exaggeration here, as our sages said in Brachos 34, all the prophets made their prophecies only for the days of the Messiah, but for the next world, neither has the eye seen a God beside thee. Okay, moving forward. This perfection is expressed in the words of the Torah and the prophecy, and in the words of our sages in the simple word dveikut, adhesion. But the widespread use of this word by the masses it has lost almost all its context. It has lost almost all its content. But if you linger on that word for even an instant, you will be overwhelmed by its wondrous stature, for you will picture the exaltedness of the Creator and the lowliness of the creature. Then you will be able to perceive the value of the vekus of one with the other, and you will understand why we ascribe that word the purpose of the whole creation. It turns out that the purpose of the whole creation is that the lowly creatures will be able, by keeping the Torah and mitzvos, to rise ever upward, ever developing, until they are rewarded with the veikut, adhesion, with the Creator. Okay? So this is very, very, we can say this, al-pi science, and it's very simple to understand that something that's finite and something that's infinite, to marry these two things together, to have them be, completely connected to each other is a huge magic trick. And so here the Baal Shem is saying that even though this seems impossible, this is precisely why God created the world, to make a complete connection between you and Him. All of creation and God. Let's keep going. Number 7. But here come the Kabbalists and ask, why were we not created in the high stature of adhesion to begin with? What reason did He have to burden us with the labor of creation and the Torah and mitzvos? And they replied, he who eats that which is not his is afraid to look at his face. This means that one who eats and enjoys the labor of one's friend is afraid to look at his face, because by doing so, he becomes increasingly humiliated until he loses his human form. And because that which extends from his wholeness cannot be deficient, He gave us room to earn our exaltedness by ourselves through the work in Torah and mitzvos. Okay? So one thing about Kabbalah, people think, oh, Kabbalah, who are you to study Kabbalah? Kabbalah is so hard. And you see, it's hard on a certain level, because we're trying to change what we think and how we feel. That's very, very hard. But as far as the methodology, it doesn't take that long, because we're never talking about anything else. One thing about Torah study is you can come into class and they're talking about a marriage contract, and then you can come into the class an hour later and somebody's talking about the holiday of Passover, right? And then you come into the other one, they're talking about astronomy, and you're like, what is this? I can't, how can I possibly keep up? And then you go into the library and there's thousands of books, right? And yet we see people who know these things by heart, but Kabbalah is not like that. Kabbalah is talking about a very narrow thing. And so this is something that we've said many, many times. And so this is called bread of shame. And this is one of the reasons why we find ourselves in this low material plane of existence. And we find ourselves in the aspect of receiving and not giving. Why didn't God just if God trying to create a place a world where all of His creatures just have an amazing time all the time, and it just gets better and better and better, why didn't He make it that way? That's the first Kabbalistic question. This is the questions of the Ari HaKodesh. So God is strong. You tell me God's all-powerful. Okay, I'm going to try to believe that. You tell me God is all good. Okay, I'm going to try to believe that. You tell me God can do whatever He wants, and God is all-powerful, and He's also all good. Okay, what's war? What's disease? What's humiliation? What are these things? And so here, the Baal Shem answers. This is from the Ari HaKodesh. Everything is from the Ari. That God could have done that, but there would have been a problem with the gift. And the problem with the gift would be that you would be the receiver with nothing, and He would be the giver with everything. And nobody likes that. Right? So if I said to you, hey, I'm buying you lunch, you'd be like, thank you, that's amazing, great. And then tomorrow I said, I'm buying you lunch. After 3 or 4 days, you know what would happen? You would say to me, I'm buying you lunch. And if you don't let me buy you lunch, then I'm not going to come back ever again. Right? Because what do I need to be? The guy who's like I have my hand out and you're the one who's giving, right? So everywhere I go, I have to be the guy who's getting everything for free, and you get to be the big shot. So here we see that God had a huge, in God's complete confidence in his own having everything, in his own existence, God did not have a fear of making you great. So God wasn't worried. He said, "Oh, if I'm a millionaire and I make you a millionaire, I don't like that." So that's why people have secrets in business, right? Because they're like, even though everybody can make money, I like being the guy who's the richest guy in my synagogue, And there's I don't like. Why should I help you become rich also? Because then it's half as fun for me. That's not how God is. God wants you to be great. So He wants you to be a giver like He is. So this is the first secret of Kabbalah, is that the reason why God created the world, this low world, is so that we can do the work of creation and transcend our egos and become like Him. So we start off in reception, accepting everything free, and we climb out of that place where we become givers. It's not easy. That's 6,000 years of development. Okay, let's keep going in the words of the Baal Shalom. These words are most profound, and I have already explained them in my book, Panim Me'irot U'Masberot, to the Tree of Life, Branch 1, and in the book, The Study of the 10 Spheros, Inner Reflection, Part 1. Here I will explain them briefly to make them understandable for all. Okay, this is amazing because the Baal Shalom, because he's from Europe and he's extremely academic, he has in his articles, he has summaries of his bigger works. And so the Talmud Esesphiros, which is the commentary on the Ariya Kodesh, is many volumes. And so the Baal Shalom doesn't even want you to have to do that. The Baal Shalom is showing that Kabbalah is not for the great people. Kabbalah is for all of us. So even if you're not a good student, and even if you're not particularly academically inclined, the Baal Shalom is doing everything he can to show you that this is a natural human process of development, and that we can be trained and learn how to do this, and that it's going to be beneficial for us, and that it's going to be the best thing ever. So here, he's going to explain all of these different larger books right now. Okay, 8. This matter is like a rich man who took a man from the market and fed him and gave him gold and silver and all desirables every day. And each day he showered him with more gifts than the day before. Finally, the rich man asked, "Do tell me, have all your wishes been fulfilled?" And he replies, "Not all of my wishes have been fulfilled. For how good and how pleasant it would be if all those possessions and precious things came to me through my own work, as they have come to you, and I would not be receiving the charity of your hand." Then the rich man told him, "In this case, there has never been born a person who could fulfill your wishes." Maybe that last sentence again. Then the rich man told him, "In this case, there has never been born a person who could fulfill your wishes." Let's see what the Baal Shalom means by that. It is a natural thing, since on the one hand we experience greater and greater pleasure the more we shower presents upon him, but on the other it is hard for him to tolerate the shame for the excessive goodness that the rich bestow upon him. This is because there is a natural law that the receiver feels shame and impatience upon receiving gifts from the giver out of compassion and pity. For here extends a second law, that never will anyone be able to satisfy the needs of his friend to fulfill, because ultimately he will not be able to give him the nature and the form of self-possession, as only with it is the desired perfection attained. Okay? I know the language is a little clunky, but it's on purpose because the Baal Shalom is not only writing it's not only writing that has an external meaning. The way that he's writing is also has in it spiritual energy flows that we don't understand, and so sometimes his sentence structures seem to be longer than needed to make the point, but we don't understand the way he's constructing sentences. And obviously this is English and not Hebrew that he wrote in, but still there's a flow of energy in the words, and I apologize that I can't read more eloquently, but the word choice is important also. And so I want to just make a point here that we see the world as we're in the material world and we're looking up at the spiritual worlds. But in Kabbalah, they tell us that the worlds really start from above and come down below. So the root of everything is in the world of consciousness, and the branch, the manifestation of the thing, is in the physical world. So we should not be surprised that all the things we see in the world are these things. We should not be surprised that in every culture, in every person, there are these things. If you go to see like a gangster movie, they'll talk about pride and humiliation and become, right? So these are all things that it's a very natural science. And I use the word science because it's a methodology. Kabbalah is a methodology. And so we shouldn't be surprised that this is manifest in everything. In every person, in every endeavor, we feel these things. And so that's because we are rooted in these rules of nature that are the rules of spiritual nature. These are not the rules of this world. These are the rules of every single world. So we just learned two rules. One is that the more a person gets, the more he likes it. And the second rule is that the more he gets from somebody, the more he becomes embarrassed that he's not the one who's giving and the one that is in charge, right? Getting something for free. Okay, let's keep going. But this relates only to the creatures, whereas regarding the Creator, it is completely impossible and unacceptable. And this is the reason He has prepared for us the toil and labor of Torah and mitzvos, to produce our exaltedness by ourselves, because then the delight and pleasure that comes to us from Him, meaning everything that is included in adhesion with Him, will be our own possession that has come to us through our own efforts. Then we will feel ourselves as the owners, without which there cannot be a sensation of wholeness. Okay? Unbelievable. So now we can explain literally half of our problems in life. We can now understand that God is doing it for our own good, and half of our questions go away when you realize that this is just the way it is. It's true. We have the same problem with our parents, right? Our parents give us the car for free, but somehow we have to leave, and we want to leave and go to college and get a job and buy our own car. Because it just does not sit well with us that somebody else is giving us and deciding things for us without being an equal participant. And so God is so great that He wants us to have, can you imagine, some kind of equivalency with Him. He wants us to be like Him. That's the size of the gift of creation. So if we just meditate on that alone, we'll change a lot of the ways that we feel about things. Okay, let's keep going. Indeed, we need to examine the heart and the source of this natural law, and who it was that fathered the flaw of shame and impatience that we feel upon receiving charity from another. It is understood from the law that it is known to scientists that each branch bears the same nature as its root, and that the branch also desires, seeks, and craves, and benefits from all the conducts of the root. Conversely, all the conducts that are not in the root, its branches remove itself from them, cannot tolerate them, and is harmed by them. This law exists between each root and its branch, and cannot be breached. So what he's saying here is that God does not have this problem. And since God is the creator of us, it makes sense that we cannot tolerate what God cannot tolerate. And so since God doesn't even have the issue of being incomplete and of being bad or any of these things, we are from Him. And so He is the root and we are the branch. And therefore, if He doesn't like something, we also don't like it. Okay? But that's easy to say because we haven't started talking about the evil inclination yet and all the evil in the world and what the purpose of that is, but we're going to get into it. Okay? Do we have to stop soon? Are we good with time?
What time?
I started at a quarter after.
You got 4 minutes.
4 minutes? Amazing. Okay. So let's keep going.
Want to sit here?
Of course you can sit there. Okay. 5 more minutes.
Okay.
Okay. Now here, opens before us a door to understand the source of all the pleasures and pains in our world. Since the Creator is the root of His creations, we feel all that exists in Him and extends to us directly from Him as pleasant and delightful, because our nature is close to our root, and everything that is not in Him and does not extend to us directly from Him, but contradicts creation itself, will be against our nature and difficult for us to tolerate. Thus, we love to rest and hate to move so much that we do not make a single movement if not for the attainment of rest. That is because our root is immobile, but at rest. That is because our root is immobile, but at rest, and no motion exists in Him whatsoever. Therefore, it is against our nature and loathsome to us. So he just said the reason why we like to be on vacation so much is because God is completely at rest. And so it's our deepest root is to be at rest. And so we have to see what that means, because the rest that we have when Mashiach comes is the rest of like the infinity symbol. It's a rest in motion. It's a rest, it's resting and doing everything at the same time. Like the heart rests and beats at the same time. So, but that's a much later topic. Okay. By the same token, we love wisdom, strength, and wealth, etc., because all those exist in Him who is our root. And hence, we hate their opposites, such as foolishness, weakness, and poverty, since they do not exist in our root at all. This makes us feel hateful and loathsome and pains us immeasurably. 10. This is what gives us the foul taste of shame and impatience when we receive from others by way of charity, because in the Creator there is no such thing as reception of favors, because from whom would He receive? And because this element does not exist in our root, we feel it as repulsive and loathsome. On the other hand, we feel delight and pleasure every time we bestow upon others, since that conduct exists in our root, which it gives to all. Obviously, there's many questions we can ask on all of these paragraphs, and in truth, people should be asking the question. So if you have a question when you hear this, you should just call out your question, because we're trying to work in our collective soul, and that's something that we have to learn how to do, which is that if Mashiach was here, we would all be feeling each other's questions. If we all loved each other deeply, and we loved each other as ourselves, I would know what you were thinking and you know what I was thinking. And so we have to learn how to reconnect those broken connections between us. Those are altruistic connections that have been broken in the breaking of the vessels. And so this is all of Kabbalah now. We can jump around and talk about all this stuff. But we have to learn how, as a group, to have a collective conversation, like a neural net of conversation, to feel each other's feelings, to feel each other's desires. That's what's coming in Kabbalah study. But I'm jumping ahead. Okay. One more and then we can stop. Now we have found a way to examine the purpose of creation, which is to cleave onto Him. It is true in its true appearance. This exaltedness and devekut, adhesion, which is guaranteed to come to us through our work in Torah and mitzvos, is no more and no less than the equivalence of the branches with their root. All the gentleness and the pleasure and the sublimity, I'm not sure I'm saying that right, sublimity, because a nature become a natural extension here, as we have said above, that pleasure is always the equivalence of form with its maker. And when we equalize in every conduct with our root, we sense delight. Let me just read that again because I was stumbling through it. Now we have found a way to examine the purpose of creation, which is to cleave onto Him in its true appearance. This exaltedness and devekut, which is adhesion, which is guaranteed to come to us through our work in Torah and mitzvos, is no more and no less than the equivalence of the branches with their root. All the gentleness and pleasure and sublimity become a natural extension here, as we have said above, that pleasure is only the equivalence of form with its maker. And when we equalize in every conduct with our root, we sense delight. Okay? So I'm just going to end here with a quick as possible encapsulation of the entire process of Kabbalah that's explained by the Ari and the 10 Spheros and the Tree of Life and everything that we're talking about. God created the world. In the world of Ein Sof, He gave the created being. This is a pre-physical world of consciousness. God gave over all the light, all the pleasure, the entire gift over to the created being, and it's called Ein Sof because all the pleasure went into the vessel. All the light went into the vessel with nothing disturbing the connection. There was only one problem. The problem was called bread of shame, which we just learned about. In bread of shame, the receiver felt, hey, I don't like this. I'm getting everything for free, and I don't like this. Oh, I see, there's a God, and God gave everything to me. I want to be like Him. God did this in the program, in the DNA of creation. God made it so that we won't like it, because He wouldn't like it, right? So we said, you know what? I don't want any of this stuff. That's called Tzimtzum Aleph, the first constriction. The created being pushed away all the light, except for a tiny little bit, because without a tiny little bit of light, they would cease to exist. And from that point on, we went through cascading levels of consciousness until we got to such a dull, thick level of consciousness that it manifests in a physicality. And in physicality, we are complete opposite to the Creator. We are only somebody who wants to receive everything and no desire to give anything over. And so now, this is all by design from God. Now we start in this plane of existence, our lives, and we build back and do our own work. And by climbing this ladder of consciousness, is a consciousness of being a taker to becoming a giver. We climb the ladder of consciousness, reunite with all humanity and all of creation, and by doing that process, we reveal God, because God is in the aspect of giving. And when we become givers, the division, the machsom, the divider, the hiddenness of God goes away. But it just naturally goes away. And we can feel, we create a new sense, a sixth sense, a collective organ that's between us, and that organ, that receptor, is where God rests, the Shekhinah rests in that place, between us, in that non-physical place between us, and that is the revelation of godliness. Okay, that was all of the whole thing that we're learning in like 2 seconds, but that's what we're learning. Thank you very much. I hope some of that made sense, and if it didn't make sense, that's fantastic. There's nothing wrong with it not making sense. These are things that we learn. The people who learn Kabbalah learn these articles their entire life and read them over and over again. And if you read it this year and you read it next year, you'll have a completely different experience as you awaken your inner consciousness. You'll understand things that no one else has ever seen before in these words, and we'll all come together and feel each other and love each other and fix the world and stop all of the suffering in the world and bring Mashiach. Amen.